They're two happy women bringing you inspiring stories, politics, pop culture, and lifestyle hacks, all with an eye to making our communities and our country a better place to live. It's the Happy Women Podcast with your hosts, Jen Horn and Katie Gorka.
Thanks for joining us and welcome to another episode of the Happy Women Podcast. I'm Jennifer Horn.
And I'm Katie Gorka, sporting my new glasses today.
Oh, look at you. I love it. New glasses, new backdrop. You're looking very sharp over there. I don't know if you noticed
the last time we talked, but my glasses were like hanging off of my face because I dropped them and broke them. and they had this big gap right here. Yeah, I learned that you cannot glue glasses.
Don't glue them. That's a no-go. All right. See, we always give you life hacks on Happy Women. Don't glue your glasses. Just get new ones. Well, they look beautiful.
Thank you.
All right. And joining us today, super excited because we have a lot to talk about with the election, with the political scene. Alex Marlow is here. He is the host of the Alex Marlow Show. He is editor-in-chief of Breitbart, Breitbart.com for all your latest news, and a two-time New York Times bestseller, plus this brand new show that he's got coming out with us. He's our colleague here on the Salem Podcast Network. Alex, congratulations on the new podcast. Can't wait to see how this goes. I know it's going to take off. It'll explode like a firecracker.
I hope so. It's a really crowded space, as you ladies know. I know you guys are just getting on your feet, and it's sounding great, and congratulations. Yeah, it is amazing medium these days. It feels like podcasters won the election, saved the country in some ways this year. So it's very cool to be joining the ranks of my good friends at Salem, who I've known for many years, Dennis Prager and Larry Elder for decades, really, and Charlie Kirk's a good friend. And we cannot forget Dr. Sebastian Gorka, who was a Breitbart editor, our national security editor, before he was as rich and famous as he's now. Hopefully rich, Katie, for your sake. I don't know if he's rich. I hope so. He's definitely famous and an amazing person. So I couldn't have found a better home.
So I know we're going to jump into it in just a second. Before we do, tell us a word about what's your podcast going to be about? Is it just kind of all politics all the time?
Yeah, it is the Alex Marlow Show, and I wanted to name it that, even though Dr. G recommended I give it a neutral name, like America First, for example. I did not take him up on it. And part of the reason is because I do want to have the ability to talk about life or talk about self-help or talk about things that people who want to either become, I would like to think, a better person, but at least a better contributor to the conservative movement. I want to be able to digress from the daily issues, but I'm a news junkie at heart. I have been since I was a teenager. I've been lucky enough to helm what I think is the most important newsroom, certainly the most important virtual newsroom in the country. And I love that job. And I think the insight I get from my colleagues at Breitbart day to day, as well as my Rolodex, including the good folks I mentioned, it is something that I want to share with the audience and connect with the audience on that basis. So the show is going to start with what's going on and what I think is important and why, and going from there, the interviews, but some life stuff as well, just to kind of balance it out. But yeah, it's a new show. That's what it's about.
Fun. That sounds like us, but we keep ours is kind of focused on women, but very similar. All right, Jen, over to you.
All right, so let's start with our very first question. It's the hot seat question. Boxers or briefs? No, I'm just kidding. It's your background, Alex. Tell us how you got.
It's a boxer briefs. I'm happy to endorse. I don't see any other way. You're
unifying the country is what you're doing by bringing those two together. No, but we want to know about where you started, how you got to be where you are today. Take us through a little bit of your background.
Well, it was a heated debate. It was a boxers or briefs debate with Andrew Breitbart back in the day. And then I said, I'm a long underwear guy, even in California. That's what I'm wearing.
You like to sweat it out a little bit. I get it.
So I had a pretty interesting backstory because I grew up in Los Angeles and I went to school called Harvard Westlake, which is highly regarded. It's gotten
Alamany High School. We used to play you all the time.
I absolutely Mission League rivals, Alamany. I started to come of age politically there largely thanks to talk radio because my parents would have talk radio on in the car. My first favorite host was Larry Elder, who's now a colleague of mine. And I started to get a sense that I was at least libertarian. I certainly wasn't a liberal or a Democrat or something like that because I was getting all that stuff at school. I was hearing all those ideas. And back then, you could at least be good-natured with people you disagreed with, but I knew I didn't agree with a lot of people's worldview, which is basically that most of the country are victims, and it is upon us to increase the size of government to take care of those victims. I didn't see any evidence that was working at all. And so I started to think, well, maybe I'm on the right somehow. And then when I got to UC Berkeley, as a college student, that really became clear to me. And this is when I started to become obsessed with talk radio and with even podcasting. I dabbled in podcasting and conservative writing and opinion. And my ideas started to really to solidify there. And it was about then that I met Andrew Breitbart at a Young America's Foundation event. And Andrew wasn't just a conservative. He was a news person. He'd worked at the Drudge Report back when Drudge was the most important conservative website. And he had this sensibility as a person also from Hollywood that the culture was upstream of politics. And he thought it was more important to actually pull on people's heartstrings, to tell a good story, to make a good joke, to weave a good narrative, than having those great political arguments that we've always had. I mean, the Wall Street Journal editorial page and the National Review, they had lots of great intellectual arguments, but we weren't winning. We were losing. We were often losing by a lot. And Andrew was holding the messengers accountable. And he offered a contrast to that. And he shared that vision. And a lot of people in the room didn't have any idea what he was talking about. But me coming from Hollywood, I knew it. I saw it. And I approached him. We hit it off. And he offered me a super glamorous job picking up dry cleaning and buying sodas and stocking the fridge. And so that's where it all started about 16 or so years ago. And it's only gone up from there.
So I understand you were actually employee number one of Breitbart. That's what my husband says. Is that true?
Absolutely true. Absolutely
Wow.
true. I started part-time for $1,000, I think was my paycheck at the time. And it was the learning experience of a lifetime. Anyone who's on the fence about going to university or not, if you're not going to study something in the STEM field, then you're much better off finding the person that is the perfect mentor for you and doing whatever you can to be in proximity of that person. I got beyond a PhD in journalism and media just by sitting in the room with Andrew for a few years.
Yeah,
Amen.
what an incredible guy. Okay, oh my gosh, I have so many things that I want to ask you about and talk about, but I want to jump back for 1 second to something that you brought up about your own personal story. You mentioned YAF. I love YAF. So I was actually yesterday with what I think of as their sister organization, the Claire Booth Luce Center for Conservative Women. I just want to give them both a shout out, Young America's Foundation and Claire Booth Luce Center for Conservative Women, because I think they are doing God's work on college campuses to support conservatism and to support conservative kids. So I love hearing that was sort of what helped you on your way. But the question I want to ask you is really about Berkeley. So I've heard, from really a number of people who managed to go to very liberal colleges and came out conservative. Did you have any? I mean, there are a handful of conservative professors there. Did you happen to have any of them, or was the whole college experience kind of a write-off and the real education was going on elsewhere?
No, I loved it. I had a great experience there. I was already pretty much a contrarian at that point. So I loved to be in an environment where I was getting challenged day in and day out. It was thrilling to me. And it was really sort of the whole point. It just suits my brain and my personality. And I know Dr. Gorka can certainly relate. He's one of the kings of these. He'll debate anyone at any time, at any moment. I've seen him do it in the middle of the street. So it's one of those things where I always liked that. So, and I knew I was a conservative, and I had gleaned by the end of high school that I was probably going to be able to hold my own in almost every debate. I can't say I won every debate that I've ever had, but I knew I was going to be fine. And I wanted to go to rabble rouse and cause problems, and respectfully, in all cases, I never did anything too naughty there, but to tick off the right people, that was a big incentive for me. And I really had a great experience doing that. And I think it really acclimated me to what I was in for in a media job, because I learned that I can be the outsider and I can still be thriving, that I don't need the approval of the establishment and I can still thrive. And in fact, you get some really cool attention for it. People are very curious to talk to you and to figure out how you got so strange. And then you start talking, and then you make more sense in the people they listen to. And that's how you get converts.
That's so interesting. Wait, I just want to ask quickly. So not a single conservative professor?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had a couple. So I would say it was more open-minded place where they totally browbeat you with fake news leftism. They were less desperate then. I think they were more confident in the academic left. It was a liberal place, but I had two conservative professors. One was a guy named A.J. Greger, who never let his bias really seep in, but you could just tell. And he's someone that people in the audience really should look up because he was one of the foremost scholars of fascism. You actually see a lot of his stuff quoted in Dinesh D'Souza's work. He passed away a few years ago. And he could actually explain to you what real totalitarian fascism is. And he was not a fascist. He was a anti-fascist, but not in the Antifa sense. He was a conservative guy, but he had an understanding of fascism and the threat and its deep connections to socialism and totalitarianism and authoritarianism and all these things that we in the modern MAGA right hate. That's what he hated. And that was all, anti-fascist stuff. And that was, I would consider him conservative, though. I guess I didn't know for sure. And I had one other professor, a guy named Dan Schnur, who was an establishment Republican. And it's really interesting. I don't think I've ever brought him up publicly, but he was a known Republican. He was an advisor to John McCain. And I was very excited to take his class thinking that we would be kindred spirits. And it would turn out to be the opposite. He was very tough on me and in the class. And I don't think that he liked my particular brand of conservatism. Now, I don't want to call him out too bad because it was a good class and it was fine. He was better than most of the teachers I had, for sure. But it was interesting because I reflect back on that when we at Breitbart were taking on the Republican establishment, 8 or 10 years ago, we started doing that. Really after that 2012 autopsy report where the Republican establishment called for more amnesty. When that happened, and we at Breitbart, with Dr. G there and many others, started saying, no way, we're not doing that. We're abandoning the Republican establishment. That's the exact type of guy I would think of as probably hating what we were doing.
It's no secret. The world's unpredictable. One moment, everything's fine, and the next, the power's out, and the cell towers are down. But with a satellite phone from sat123.com, you don't have to be cut off from the world. No matter where you are or what's happening, Sat123 keeps you connected. Whether you're deep in the mountains, on the road, or dealing with a natural disaster, your satellite phone will work when nothing else does. This is about being prepared. Sat123.com is family-owned, American-built, and focused on keeping you safe. They understand that in today's world, connection is more than convenience. It's essential. So here's the deal. Go to sat123.com and use code Katie for $25 off your first purchase. Don't get caught off guard. Stay connected. Stay prepared with Sat123.
And don't you think that, going back just to how this it kind of applies today, you see so much more of the movement standing behind those people who are part of the grassroots, who, as you said, are sort of those out-of-the-box thinkers. It seems like that is what's pulling people into what is the new conservative message. And that's, I guess, our transition into what happened in the 2024 election as we're still sifting through some of these results. Take us through what you think went right with President Trump's campaign this time, maybe as opposed to the last time, or maybe probably more importantly, what went wrong with the Democrats' message? Because I don't think it's as much about Kamala Harris as it is about a Democrat Party that has just pushed people to the wall.
Yeah, it's really interesting where you want to start. The easier case is that she was a terrible candidate. And then I could talk about some of the great things Trump did, but I'll start with her being a bad candidate. First of all, Joe Biden was a bad candidate also, but he was a much better candidate than she was. And this is part of why she was placed on the ticket. I researched both of them extensively for my book, Breaking Biden, which became a New York Times bestseller. It was pretty popular. And looking into them, I was much more, even though I don't think he's a good guy, I thought he was a terrible president, I became more appreciative of Joe Biden's political skills the more I researched him. And Kamala Harris had none of that. And the person who knew that was Joe Biden. Joe Biden knew that she actually was sort of a weak link and was never going to be smart enough to surpass him unless, of course, he had some sort of a debacle like exactly what happened at the debate where he didn't even know where he was. I thought he was going to wander around the audience and start sniffing the moderators at some point. He looked completely lost. So that's part of why she was there. She's never been bright. She's never achieved much. She was chosen by this group of people called the San Francisco Mafia and anointed when she was 29 years old by her boyfriend, Willie Brown, who was in his 60s. So that was her background. Yeah, I know. Creepy as it is. I only go quickly because I feel like people may have heard the story a time or two. But there's nothing about her that can relate to normal people. And she was a uniquely terrible candidate for the state of Pennsylvania. And my official prediction was that whoever wins Pennsylvania is going to win. I didn't necessarily think Pennsylvania was going to be necessary to win, and it turned out it wasn't for President Trump. But I did have a feeling however Pennsylvania votes, the rest of the country is going to go with them. And she was the worst candidate imaginable. She not only passed over Governor Shapiro, who was a much more qualified pick than Tim Walz, because everyone was. You ladies and we were all more qualified than Tim Walz. I mean, that was the weirdest person on the planet. And she's anti-fracking. She said, I want to be in fracking. How could you, in a bad economy, maybe in a thriving economy, you get away with that. But in a bad economy, how could you tell the people of Pennsylvania, we don't want to tap all of these billions of dollars of free money that's standing underneath your feet? She was never going to win that state, ever. It was never going to happen. And so I was kind of blown away that they kept acting like she had a shot there.
Like she was close. They seemed surprised legitimately, though.
Yeah, it was. I didn't think it was ever going to be. I thought Trump was always going to get it. I thought that they'd have to cheat at such a high level. But to Trump's credit, and he deserves a ton, he did something that I didn't know he could do. He actually improved. He became a better candidate. He was a worse candidate in 2020 than 2016. It wasn't even close. I could bend your ear on that for a long time, and the audience would probably get very frustrated with me. But he got much worse as a candidate between those two elections, and he got even better than 2016 this time around. He made nice with Governor Kemp in Georgia. Brilliant move. I'm sure he hated doing that, but it was a brilliant move. He tapped Laura Trump in North Carolina to be the RNC co-chair. Another brilliant move. A daughter of North Carolina who is so appealing. Who doesn't like Laura Trump? He didn't mess up the great hand he was dealt in Pennsylvania. And he built this huge tent with a capital Y. Elon Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, Dana White, Bobby Kennedy. I don't care what all of you guys think of these people. Maybe you like them, maybe somewhere in between. They're not garbage. Joe Biden called them all garbage. These people are not garbage, and we know that. And that coalition was just so powerful. And then this wonderful media campaign with the podcasting he did. He was awesome. He was just absolutely awesome, this campaign.
So with all of that, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think he is far and away the hardest working candidate we have ever had. I think I told Sebastian I wanted to know, and he found out. I think there were over 900 rallies and events. I don't know that they've counted the number of podcasts and interviews. That man was tireless. He personally came in contact with so many people. So I have to say, the thing that actually shocks me is that it wasn't a bigger landslide. Like, how did she get as many votes as she did?
I think about this quite a bit. How can you have a campaign rooted in her big three things where, first of all, if we don't win, the fascists are going to come and take your vote and maybe lock you up. Her next big thing was that you guys really are all the deplorables, that it was the democracy is under attack. January the 6th was the most violent day in the history of the country. And it is all of these people just don't believe in any laws or any right to vote, even though she herself was nominated without receiving a single vote. And the Democrats basically rigged their primary for Joe Biden ahead of time before kicking him out, that these people were going to be presented as the stewards of democracy. And then finally, abortion, which there are more abortions now than when Roe v. Wade was overturned, that was going to be their entire slate of issues. And with grocery prices being what they are, the fact that they even stood a chance on election night is something we need to think about, because they shouldn't have. I don't know how anyone votes for them in that environment. And yet they did. She got a lot of votes.
She did. Fear-based. I mean, I swear a lot of women thought that it was going to be the Handmaid's Tale the minute President Trump gets back into office. I mean, there's this real fear. I've been drowning in liberal tears on social media the last couple of days.
Yep.
I do think it's a great thing. As much as, yes, I can't believe anybody can vote for her. It was, for all intents and purposes, kind of a landslide for Trump. He won the popular vote. We found out he won on election night. He won all of the states he needed and then some more. I mean, it was just a really good showing. But as you're looking at these numbers, and I know we're not supposed to really bring this up, but you said nothing's off limits, Alex. In 2020, Joe Biden had 81 million votes. She brings in 67 million-ish, where the last time I checked, before we recorded this, he was at like 71, 72 million. So Where in the heck are those like almost 14 million votes that Joe Biden got? Did they just disappear poof? Are they home sitting there, eating bonbons? Where did those people go?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one that's got to be asked. And I think it would give a lot of legitimate people who are not garbage comfort if Donald Trump tries to dedicate some resources to figuring out what happened. And if he can articulate it in a way that sounds reasonable, I think that would be very productive for him to do, because the math is not there. It's just not there. I knew that Joe Biden was a stronger candidate than the Republicans were giving him credit for in 2020. And I knew the Republicans were running a not good race for a million reasons, again, that we could spend time on, but I don't think we need to today. I think in retrospect, everyone sees it as an inferior campaign to what we saw this time around. But still, the delta of what is it going to be, 15 million votes? We know some of those people voted for Trump. We know that. We know some of them stayed home because of probably any of the aforementioned reasons would make you lose faith in the Democrats. But, I mean, she lost like 20% of their votes. I mean, 15%. Those numbers are ridiculous. It makes you feel like there was something up. And I don't know what it was. I know their cheat by mail operation or their vote by mail operation, if I want to be more polite, it was much better during the pandemic. That was clear. I'm sure they were a lot more enthusiastic to vote Trump out then than they are now. But still, that is a lot of votes to explain. And I haven't seen a logical explanation yet.
One of the issues that's come up in Virginia that somebody raised but didn't really pursue it is the fact that you had multiple townships that had almost 100% voter turnout. So there are clues there. But I'm glad we started into this, because this is actually where I wanted to go next. I'm really curious about this, and I've debated this with several different people, and different people take different views on this. But for me, two key issues that I think are a real dividing point, and I think they're super important for the country. One is what really happened in 2020, and the other is what really happened at J6. Do you think we should just move past and let it go and look to the future? Or do you think we should take advantage of this opportunity to try to dig in and try to tell the truth about what happened in those two occasions?
Yeah, I am always someone who's going to look forward and more than backwards. It's just my sensibilities, but that's a particular sensibility that I have. And I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. And I would read a great book about what really happened on J6 and how Biden really got 80 plus million votes. I would love to hear those stories, and I think they're worth looking into. It's not going to be my focus. My focus personally in the Breitbart newsroom, we're going to be looking ahead and trying to make sure that we don't waste this historic opportunity. I completely relate to anyone who's feeling vindicated and feeling like they want to return the favor to the evil, awful Democrats, not just all the rank and file voters. Most of them are fine, but the people who control the party and the media, they've been awful. They've been pure evil for the last 4 years and beyond. And a lot of them deserve to be taken to task for it. And I'm fine if anyone wants to do that and spend the time on it. But for me, I'm much more excited to see, can we make a new golden age in America in the next 4 years? Because if Trump does what he's capable of doing, I think we've never had a better opportunity.
One of your writers is my buddy, Joel Pollack, and he's got the first 100 days of Trump, the agenda. What would you like? It's a great book. And what would you like to see, Alex, so that we don't want to squander opportunities. And I think Trump is better equipped today than he was going into office in 2016. He'll tell you he didn't know how to govern when he walked in. He got surrounded by people who didn't have his best intentions. I think all of those things are out the window. He's going to come in with the people that matter to him. What would you like to see? What do you think really is possible over the next 4 years?
Yeah, I got a few do's and at least one don't. The do's are the obvious ones. Finish the wall, restore all those made in, remain in Mexico, Northern Triangle agreements, Title 42, all that stuff. It's the end, catch, and release, and the parole pipeline, which is where all these people can go to the border and basically check in there and then just go into America for eternity. We got to end all that stuff on day one. And then the next step is to tap every single energy resource we possibly can. Wherever it is, we got to go get it. And I'm talking fracking, I'm talking oil, I'm talking natural gas. I don't even care if it's wind and solar. I honestly don't. I just want a nuclear, of course. Whatever gets that energy tap, that's going to drive prices down of everything. And that's going to create huge momentum with the public because people are going to feel deep relief when prices, we're not talking about just lowering inflation. We're talking about prices could come down if energy prices drop as much as they could. So those are the first places to start. And the other one is to appoint a terrific cabinet of all hardcores. No squishes, not one, no sops to the establishment, no kumbaya efforts. And this is my big don't.
So Mitt Romney for Secretary of State is not on your bingo card?
Who? What did you say?
Mitt Romney?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, no, I'm all up for him making Mitt come to an awkward dinner, though. That was awesome.
I know.
Like, he was never going to pick him anyway. But he made him go to the
It was a steakhouse in New York, the famous
dinner.
one.
I'm into that. Let's do it. Let's have all the weirdos come to dinner, make them all sit there, have Trump hold court, maybe wheel out Musk, have Musk do some sort of performance art for them. Yeah, that'd be great. Make them all do that. But then don't pick them. Don't pick them. Send them home. And then the same thing goes with, I loved his acceptance speech because a lot of people were saying he needs to be unifying. No, he does not. He needs to secure the border, restore law and order, hold China to task, end all these foreign wars, get in Putin and Zelensky's face and saying, you guys are working this out. Go to the Middle East and say, the next time you guys pull on October 7th, we're going to come in and we're going to drop bombs on all of you. So you best stop. All this stuff, just start regulating around the world. He can do all this in 100 days, and then we're going to be off to the races.
Yep.
All right. So I have to talk
real quick here. Just real quick here, though. I think when it comes to his cabinet, he's ready to go. I think he's got these people already in position. I think you're going to see a lot that is going to get done quickly because I think everybody's been making plans. I mean, those plans are already in place. So I do feel good about that.
Yeah, and you know what's amazing, and we can't talk about this, but what's the project, the heritage thing that we're not supposed to talk about?
2025.
Yeah, it's like so the thing that people missed about this is not some nefarious agenda. And by the way, I think the way that was rolled out was absolutely asinine, and I will criticize it to the hilt. But the crux of it was just trying to vet people so that Trump could staff a government. And so just know that was happening. And they are much further along in the vetting process. And when you get a mandate like Trump has now, he's going to get to pick whoever he wants. It's his last election ever. So I am so optimistic that he's going to build a great team around him, which he did not have for 3 years last time.
And not only was Heritage doing vetting, but America First Policy Institute was doing vetting and training. Because I tell you, another big problem is when you bring in a bunch of people that have not been in government before, they don't know how to behave. You've got to train them. And that's also a big difference this time going in that makes me encouraged. All right, I need to shift selfishly to something that's my big concern, but I think this is a concern for you two being in California as well. The one demographic. No, I think there were only two demographics where Kamala did slightly better than Joe. One was like rich white people or rich white women and atheists. But the rich white
right. That's about right.
Take them.
But the women thing really gets to me because, I'm sitting here in Virginia. We've got a major uphill fight next year. So, Kamala still won Virginia by 5 points. Okay. She shaved Trump shaved Biden's win by 5 points. So that was great. It's going in a good direction. But we have a super important race next year, which is governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general. And if the Democrats get a trifecta in Virginia, Virginia will never come back from it. I truly believe that. And the big problem that we have here is we have a huge population of elites. So we have a lot of immigrants, and I think that's been really, really good for us. And I think that's why you're seeing a weakening of the blue wall. But we have a lot of these wealthy white elites who are never Trump, who are totally all in, I'm a racist Democrat. How do we get to them? You talked about narrative. You talked about the lessons from Breitbart. How do we bring them on board? How do we turn them around?
Sure. I think this is a terrific question. I think the first thing is that naturally, I think if the economy booms, and I think it will, everyone's going to get a little bit richer, and I think this is going to help. I think that's for starters. But I do think messaging-wise, that I think that there's a lot of pro-choice voters who voted for Trump because abortion access in this country is not so bad. I'm a pro-life person, and I donate to pro-life causes, and I applaud the overturning of Roe versus Wade. I hope Trump picks hardcore Federal Society approved justices and judges throughout. That said, abortion did not go down in this country after Roe v. Wade was overturned. And it's good to point that out to people who are concerned about feeding their families and are concerned about the price of things and getting better jobs and being able to afford a mortgage, that, you can still get an abortion if you really need it. And I think making that point, which Trump has, but is not emphatic enough, you might be able to pick off some moderates doing that. And you do it without compromising that our pro-life values. Our values are pro-life, but to point out to people there's more to life than just Roe versus Wade. We didn't do that during the campaign, and it would be nice to do that next time. I also think that there's a narrative for particularly younger women who are doing well in their careers, that it is the Democrats are trying to they're trying to undermine the family unit in order to preserve their political advantage. And I want to be really careful how I word this, because there's a lot of great women, some in my life, my immediate surroundings, who are single women, who are over 30. I'm not trying to attack crazy cat ladies. This is not that. What I am saying, though, the Democrats see this voting bloc of particularly unmarried women, and they are taking advantage of this group. And they want them married to the state, and they don't want them to feel what it's like to have a family, because once you have that, then you become conservative. They're aware of this. They're that cynical. And I think if we can politely share with people in our lives that there is a real hoodwinking going on of that demographic, then perhaps we're not going to win them all, but maybe we can get some of them back when they realize that they're pawns in an agenda that is being controlled by not good people who failed this country over the last 4 years, to keep them in, serving the companies of Facebook and Amazon and Google or Wall Street banks, instead of trying to do what's best for themselves as individuals. I think that's a compelling case that we've never really tried to make, and I would love to see us try now.
I think that you're really onto something, because if you've looked over the last few days at social media, the loony liberal lady tears, I mean, there are so many of them. People are crying, they're puffy-eyed. And I don't believe that that's coming out of nowhere. That's coming because there is a real fear that is being spoon-fed, sure, especially to single women. And we talked about this. My mom, and I mentioned this to you, Katie, my mom is a liberal. I love her to pieces. She told me that the reason she was afraid that Trump would get elected is that I would no longer be able to have a credit card or own my home. And my mom is brilliant. She's a master's degree in Shakespearean studies. She is not a stupid woman. She is incredibly intelligent. But the fear that they have dished out and doled out during this cycle is really real. And people are feeling that right now, right? They think everything's going to go away. I think when it doesn't, as we know that won't, and I think when you listen to President Trump in his acceptance speech, and he said the only thing he talked about with uniting was uniting people when we are successful. He has an opportunity right now to take the people that gave him a chance and maybe voted for a Republican for the first time. With a proven success story, we can make those lifetime voters, and that is really good for our future successes in this country.
Beautiful. I love it.
Okay, thank you.
Write it down and send it to him. Write it down and send it to him.
No, but truly,
I know a couple guys who know him. Katie, do you know any?
But truly, it is the success story that we can build that's going to continue to help grow our base. All right, so I do want to ask you a California question.
Sure.
I think that we have not seen the last of cackling Kamala. I think she's going to come back and run for governor. What do you think? You think she's doing it?
Yeah, they like to give consolation prizes out, and I don't know. I think she's got a lot of money. I just know her real estate portfolio is big. I think Doug's been very successful as an entertainment lawyer, and what a hunk he is. Oh, man. Just when I heard he was slapping the nannies, wait a minute.
Charming, right?
Yeah, no, he was stepping out with the nannies and slapping the other. Whatever he was doing, it just sounded so sexy to me. I just woo. Just redefining what it means to be a man. No, but I don't know if she needs a big bag of cash like the Biden family does. So I don't know if she wants a professorship or a think tank thing. So I would not be shocked. I'm sure they would basically hand it to her, and we'll all suffer for it because she's a terrible politician. She's really not good.
And her paperwork's filed. People, I don't know if they realize this. She filed it preemptively a few years ago. So
I'll tell you, that speech yesterday was not someone who is exiting the political stage.
No.
That was someone who's taking a time out.
But that was also someone who has gotten no better at political speeches in all this time. So if I were a donor, I just can't imagine putting my money behind her.
Well, I have to give a humble plug here, not to abuse the platform, but the second episode of Alex Marlow Show, I play almost half the speech, and I explain why it was not a good speech and why it should be exasperating for any person with two brain cells to rub together. So, but it didn't sound like someone who's quitting. It sounds like someone who's just moving on to the next thing.
I'm going to have to listen to that episode.
I know. We're downloading it. Alex Marlow Show at SalemPodcastNetwork.com. You got to check it out. All right, final moments here. Let's do a wrap up. So President Trump, the great news, he's in. We think his transition is going to be great. He's going to have good people around him. What is going to happen to all the lawfare? How do the Democrats continue to fight him? Do you think that they have a path, or is it just, it's too much? They've already overplayed their card.
It's so funny. I've been getting this question a lot. This is what I'm committed to dedicating the next several months of my life to being able to make sure I have the best answers for this. For starters, if Joe Biden tries to pardon Trump as some sort of a stunt, he should absolutely not accept. That's a terrible idea. And it is because Trump should accept no guilt. And he should absolutely talk about the political nature of these prosecutions. They were completely political, 100%, never would have happened, any of them, if he wasn't the political figure he is. The DOJ, it's all going to be shut down the second Trump is sworn in. You can't prosecute a seated president. Anyway, he will not serve a day in jail. So for me, I think the faster they wrap it up, the better for them. The better they just kind of whimper off under the porch like a wounded dog. They're better off doing that. Any attempts to string this out any longer is only going to look worse, considering that not only is Trump more popular when these things started, he is now at the peak of his popularity. He's never been more popular. So I kind of want them to drag out a little bit longer, but they won't. I mean, the smart move is to wrap them all up.
Well, we thank you so much for joining us. We want you to come back. You are so much fun to talk to. Alex Marlow is the host of the Alex Marlow Show, a brand new podcast here on the Salem Podcast Network. So here's what you do, SalemPodcastNetwork.com. You just click on Alex's picture and you'll be connected to all the platforms where you can download, you can listen and stream the podcast. He's also editor-in-chief over at Breitbart. Use him every single day for your latest news, Breitbart.com. And of course, pick up his books, New York Times bestsellers. I mean, come on. It's like he's a Renaissance man over here. You do it all, Alex. Come on. You ever take a break?
I don't
you ever
sleep. I'll tell you that. I got that in common with President Trump. We don't have any sleeping time.
I know. Sleeping's overrated. I'm with you guys on that team. All right. And thank you so much, Alex. Such a pleasure to have you. And of course, don't forget to get Katie's book. It is called Next Gen Marxism, which you can get wherever you get your books. And of course, you can give her a follow. Search her out on Facebook and just look for Catherine Gorka, or go to katiegorka.org. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Jennifer Horn Radio, and on X, and on Truth at Jennifer Horn. And thank you so much for those 5-star reviews. Please share our podcast. Keep those reviews coming. They really do mean a lot to us. And you can connect with us everywhere, SalemPodcastNetwork.com. Thanks for joining us. It's another episode of the Happy Women Podcast.